Good evening, I'm Avery Lowe, and I'm the Interpretive Programs Coordinator for the Holland Museum. Thank you for joining us this evening. We had planned to do this in person, but we're making the best of COVID-19 restrictions. We are proud to offer these types of programs to our community at no cost. But if you'd like to make a donation to the Holland Museum, please visit our website, hollandmuseum.org/support. We really appreciate your support. I'd like to introduce tonight's speaker, Jerry Shoup. Jerry worked at the H.J. Heinz Company for 38 years, managing the Heinz Holland factory for 28 years before retiring in 2013. He graduated from The Ohio State University in 1968 with a degree in food science and received his PhD in food science from The Ohio State University in 1975. I'll let Jerry get started.
Thank you, Avery. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or whatever time it is in your location. As Avery said, my name is Jerry Shoup. The title of my presentation is Heinz Holland, A Story of Survival and Success. I retired in April 2013 after a 38-year career with H.J. Heinz Company, which I thoroughly enjoyed. During my career, I held various positions within Heinz in Ohio, California, and Michigan. For the last 28 years, I was responsible for manufacturing and agricultural operations here in Heinz Holland. As Avery mentioned, I graduated from The Ohio State University in 1968 with an undergraduate degree in food science, earning a PhD degree in 1975. Within 3 months after graduation, I received my draft notice in December 1968. I then enlisted in the United States Army and was sent to Vietnam. My first son was born while I was in Vietnam. I learned about his birth 3 days later through the Red Cross. When I returned home in June 1970, I decided to go back to graduate school. I wanted to complete a graduate research project which would have an impact upon the food industry. Limiting chlorides in groundwater was a major environmental issue at the time. Salt is necessary for cucumber pickle fermentations. My project, salt-free, food-grade acid storage of cucumbers, offered an alternative to salt brine fermentation of cucumbers. I published a paper on the research in the Journal of Food Science, which led to presenting this paper at the Institute of Food Technologists annual meeting in New Orleans in May 1974. The director of research and development for Heinz was in the audience. After the presentation, he asked me if I would come to Pittsburgh and review the research with Heinz research and development personnel. I agreed and went to Pittsburgh. A week later, my graduate advisor called me and said Heinz wanted to hire me. I said I was not looking for a position because I needed another year to complete my dissertation and graduate exams. My advisor said I would be absolutely crazy not to accept the position since it was a great opportunity. He advised me to negotiate with Heinz to get the time to travel to and from Columbus to complete the degree. Heinz told me they wanted me to complete the degree. I then accepted a research position with the H.J. Heinz Company in June 1974. I graduated a year later with the PhD in food science. Due to many other Heinz priorities, I never pursued this research with Heinz. Ironically, 20 years later, a company, Global Green in India, started to utilize a process similar to my research to ship cucumbers in sea containers to customers in the United States and Canada including Heinz Holland. I published a book on my Heinz career titled American Manufacturing, A Story of Survival and Success in March 2018. The book was dedicated to the highly competent and resourceful management and union Heinz Holland employees who took the necessary steps to allow the Holland factory to survive and grow. Over the next 60 minutes, I believe you will understand why Heinz Holland is a story of survival and success. The book is available through Amazon, the Holland Reader's World, or the Holland Museum gift shop. You may or may not know that Heinz is the only company in the history of Holland to do business in 3 centuries under the same name, ownership, and product line for 116 years from 1897 to 2013. In 2013, Heinz was acquired by Warren Buffett, Berkshire Hathaway, and then a few years later merged with Kraft, which was also owned by Buffett, to become the Kraft Heinz Food Company. I was very proud to have had the opportunity to work for Heinz. Heinz was a great company with a great history. Mr. Heinz, Henry John Heinz, and his brother Frank started the Heinz Company in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in 1869. The company initially was named F&J Heinz. F for Frank and J for John, Henry John Heinz' middle name. Their first product was horseradish. You can see the F&J Heinz on the side panel of the first product bottle made around 1870. Heinz from the very beginning was well known for his label and marketing expertise. Note the front label with Heinz, strictly pure, with a picture of a horse and the word radish under it. Heinz guaranteed its products were pure, and he used clear glass so his consumers could see the product inside the jar, unlike some of his competitors who use non-clear jars to hide inferior quality products. Within 2 years, the company went bankrupt. Henry John Heinz then bought out his brother Frank and changed the name to the H.J. Heinz Company. Throughout his life, his favorite product was pickles, and genuine dills made in 50-gallon barrels, his favorite pickle. In 1893, Mr. Heinz introduced his iconic Pickle Pin at the 1893 Chicago World's Fair. This slide shows the original 1893 Pickle Pin. Plastics and safety pins were not available at this time, so the Pickle Pin was made with a hard vegetable paste and a hook so that it could be worn attached to a vest, which was a popular piece of clothing at the time. He promised a gift for everyone who visited the Heinz booth during the World's Fair. The Saturday Evening Post published an article saying this Pickle Pin gifting event was the most successful marketing tool and event during the time. Years later, the Pickle Pin was made from plastics with a safety pin. For well over 100 years, the Heinz Pickle Pin was handed out at events and celebrations in Holland and elsewhere in the United States. I personally can remember receiving many requests for donations of pickle pins for many different celebrations and events in Holland. Mr. Heinz immigrated to the United States from Germany. While in Europe, Mr. Heinz experienced several labor strikes and labor unrest. He was aware of many businesses failing due to labor unrest. He believed this labor unrest was due primarily to the way employers treated their employees. This led him to form one of his main business principles, which he called heart power. To Mr. Heinz, heart power meant doing everything possible to make your employees feel good about the workplace. One of his main mottos was heart power is stronger than horsepower. This was at a time in the mid-1800s when horses were very important, moving cannons and wagons in the Civil War, as well as moving products to market. Mr. Heinz had several teams of horses hauling his wagons filled with Heinz food products to market. He provided doctors and dentists at his factories for his employees and their families. He provided the best facilities for his employees. In 1917, he provided $1,000 life insurance policies to his employees because of his concern that his employees going off to World War I may not return to their families. Heinz may have been the first or one of the first companies to offer life insurance to employees. Mr. Heinz guaranteed that his food products were pure and did not contain any toxic materials like some of his competitors. This slide shows his Pure Food logo, which was placed on the barrel heads of his 50-gallon barrels of pickles. He lobbied Theodore Roosevelt to pass the Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906, which eventually led to the current Food and Drug Administration. In December 1896, Mr. Heinz looked for a location in western Michigan to build a pickle factory. He set his sights on Michigan because Michigan was the largest cucumber state then, and I still believe it is today. He needed a location which provided a boat dock and rail siding to be able to ship his 50-gallon barrels and jars of pickles by boat or rail into Chicago and the Midwest. Mr. Heinz promised the Holland mayor and town council that he would start a pickle business in Holland if the city would give Heinz 2 acres of land with a boat dock and a rail siding, and if local farmers and gardeners would commit to growing 300 acres of cucumbers for Heinz. Holland City bought 2 acres of land with a boat dock and a rail siding from one of the original 1847 Holland settlers for $800 on the present-day site of Heinz. The city also held several town hall meetings with local farmers and citizens soliciting acres of cucumbers for Heinz. By February 1897, 500 acres were committed. Local farmers paid $2 per acre committed to fund the $800 land purchase. Heinz immediately committed to building the pickle factory. The original 16,000 square foot factory cost $1,800 and was commissioned in June 1897. The Heinz Pickle Factory grew significantly and started to make vinegar to support the pickle business and sell vinegar to customers. Heinz Holland soon became a pickle and vinegar factory. Heinz Holland claimed to be the largest pickle factory in the world. Here is one of the early Heinz Holland pickle jars, Heinz Sweet Gherkins, most likely produced in the new Heinz Holland factory around 1900. Screw caps were not available at this time, and so corks were used to close the jars. Note the necktie label, guaranteed pure to comply with all food laws throughout the world. The various Heinz factory managers faced some difficult times and issues concerning not only Heinz businesses, but also the Holland community. During the Great Depression, during the 1930s, Heinz was concerned about hungry citizens of Holland and made free surplus Heinz food products available for citizens to pick up at the front gate. During World War II, during 1944 and 1945, there was a German prisoner of war camp in Allegan. Heinz utilized POWs on a voluntary basis to do the heavy lifting work. After all, many of the men in Holland who were also Heinz employees were off fighting the war in Europe. The POWs being used to do the heavy lifting work were bused to Holland daily. The POWs were happy to be able to leave the prison camp and go to Heinz. At this time, many Heinz employees were Dutch and could speak Dutch and German, and therefore could communicate with the prisoners. Heinz was concerned about treating the POWs fairly. It was illegal to pay POWs in US currency. Heinz paid the POWs with coupons, which could be used to purchase cigarettes, toothpaste, candy, and other items in the prison camp. In 1963, the factory manager was concerned about the amount of Heinz products being sold in local Holland grocery stores. He felt that Heinz was one of the largest companies in Holland, and its citizens were not able to buy as many Heinz products as desired in the local grocery stores. To raise awareness, he organized the Silver Dollar campaign, whereby Heinz employees were paid in silver dollars one week and the next week paid in $2 bills. He asked all employees to go to the local grocery stores and make a big issue about the stores not having enough sufficient Heinz products while waiting in line to pay for their groceries with silver dollars one week or $2 bills the next week. He arranged for the local press to take pictures of him going to the local bank and loading a wheelbarrow with silver dollars to go back to the factory and pay the employees. When I started to work for Heinz, I immediately started to focus upon the major issue facing Heinz and other pickle companies in the early 1970s. Huge losses were being incurred due to cucumber bloating during fermentation of cucumbers into pickles. Carbon dioxide is produced during the fermentation when natural cucumber sugars are converted into lactic acid during fermentation. Carbon dioxide is a soluble gas, and in a dissolved state being formed in the brine solution, can enter the interior of the cucumber through the cucumber skin. As the acidity increases due to lactic acid being formed during fermentation, the dissolved carbon dioxide inside the cucumber becomes less stable, and at some point will come out of solution into a gas state and blow out the center of pickles, causing hollow centers. Hollow center pickles will result in hamburger slices with hollow centers after slicing. Over 50% of Heinz cucumber pickles were unacceptable for hamburger dill slices because McDonald's and other food chains considered slices with hollow centers a quality defect and did not allow more than 10% defects in the product they purchased. The financial losses for Heinz were huge, causing Heinz upper management to question, why are we in this pickle business, and to consider exiting the hamburger slice business, which would have been a death blow to Heinz Holland factory during the 1970s. Here you see a picture of bloated pickles in the upper half of the picture. Here you can see the gas damage from carbon dioxide coming out of solution and blowing out the center, causing hollow centers in the cucumbers, and after slicing, causing hollow slices, as compared to non-bloated, normal fermented cucumbers in the lower half of the picture. Cucumber bloating became a huge research focus at North Carolina State and Michigan State universities. Research started evaluating purging of cucumber brines during fermentation with nitrogen or air to remove carbon dioxide before it could enter the interior of the cucumbers and cause bloating. I attended many scientific forums to discuss this process. The purging process involved purging with air or nitrogen, and the reason why nitrogen was chosen, either pure nitrogen or air, after all, air is 70% nitrogen. The reason why nitrogen was chosen was because nitrogen is 100% insoluble and will always remain in a gas bubble state in a brine or any liquid solution. A 1/4-inch air line was inserted in the pipe and attached to a porous diffusion stone at the bottom of the pipe. The small bubbles arising from the diffusion stone would lift fermenting tank brine up the pipe and continuously pump and circulate the brine. As the brine was being lifted in the tube, it was shaken, much like shaking a bottle of soda or champagne, causing all the dissolved carbon dioxide to come into a bubble state and come out of solution and be discharged at the surface of the tank. This prevented the dissolved gas from entering the cucumber, causing bloating. Here you see a tank being purged with the carbon dioxide being released at the surface. This purging process was a huge success and eliminated the bloating problem for all pickle companies, including Heinz. This saved the Heinz Holland factory from closing in the mid-1970s. Purging also saved hamburger dill slices from becoming an extinct pickle product. For over 100 years, from the 1870s to the 1970s, Heinz enjoyed the leading U.S. market share for pickles. Mr. Heinz was known as the Pickle King. Most consumers knew the Heinz company as a pickle company. During the 1970s, Vlasic and other regional pickle companies in the South and Midwest became very aggressive and started to significantly grow their pickle businesses, taking share from Heinz. Heinz decided it made more sense to invest in more profitable businesses like ketchup rather than to spend huge sums of money to protect its pickle market share. This became a huge cloud over the Heinz Holland Pickle Factory for many years. Heinz considered closing the Holland factory several times during the 1980s and 1990s. Tony O'Reilly was the CEO of Heinz during the 1980s and 1990s. His performance as CEO was outstanding. Heinz stock price increased significantly. Heinz was known as a darling of Wall Street. I remember at least 2 stock splits during his tenure. During the mid-1990s, the Associated Press interviewed Tony and asked the question, "What was your biggest mistake as CEO of Heinz?" Tony responded, "Staying in the pickle business." As Bernie Sanders would say, this was huge as it affected me and all other Heinz Holland employees. The Holland Sentinel focused upon this AP interview and started to speculate that the Heinz Holland factory may be closed. Heinz Holland management staff and union leaders certainly understood that Heinz Holland would most likely close unless significant steps were taken to maintain the viability of the factory. This realization led to a hang-on strategy to cut costs and generate income through various Heinz factory initiatives, whereby it made more sense from a cost point of view for Heinz to keep the doors open rather than spending the money to close the doors. We also realized that by hanging on, cutting costs and generating income from our own initiatives, that eventually Heinz Holland costs would become low enough that it would make sense for Heinz to transfer products from other Heinz factories into Heinz Holland factory. This is, in fact, what happened. With declining pickle production due to declining pickle sales, Heinz upper management was reluctant to approve critical capital improvement projects. One critical project was antiquated cucumber farmer truck receiving and unloading system. Farmer truck unloading was being significantly delayed due to system breakdowns. Farmers were fuming because they need to get their trucks unloaded and back into the fields to pick up additional loads being harvested. There were so many complaints from the Heinz agricultural group representing Heinz farmers that the Heinz headquarters vice president of manufacturing scheduled a trip to Holland factory to make reorganizational changes to address the problem. The current Heinz Holland factory manager was so upset by the proposed reorganizational changes, of which he was unaware, that he resigned and walked out of the factory. At the time, I was in technical services doing product development and research projects. I remember getting a call that morning telling me to stay in my office and to be in the factory manager office later that morning. I knew all about the farmer problems the factory was having, and I knew the vice president of manufacturing was at the factory. I started to think I was going to be fired, and I couldn't understand why. When I walked into the factory manager office to see the vice president, I was told about the factory manager resigning and was told that we want you to be the new factory manager effective immediately. I asked if I could go home and talk to my wife. What I really wanted to do is get out of that office to try to digest what I had just been told. The vice president said, "Okay, but you need to be back here in 1 hour to meet your new production manager and financial controller from Pittsburgh headquarters, who will be here today, and someone needs to give them a factory tour." I never had met them before. I believe that this unusual meeting for the three of us created a bond among us to do whatever was necessary to keep the factory from failing. We needed $2 million in capital to replace our antiquated farmer receiving and grading system. We knew that asking Pittsburgh headquarters for $2 million in capital for a declining pickle business would be a career-ending move. We decided that our only option was to outsource the farmer receiving and grading operations to Swanson Pickle Company in Ravenna, Michigan. I knew John and Don Swanson through the Pickle Packer Trade Association. Swanson was an excellent company and well known in the industry. We agreed in discussions with Swanson that the Swanson cost to receive and unload our Heinz farmers could not be any higher than our current cost for this outsourcing to be successful. This outsourcing to Swanson was a smart move. It avoided $2 million in capital costs for Heinz and eliminated our grower unloading problem without increasing our operational costs. It also eliminated up to 100 cucumber trucks coming into Holland daily in the summer tourist season with all the dirt and dust from the farmer fields. Eliminating this traffic congestion and making the Heinz factory and surrounding residential area adjacent to Cullen Park cleaner and more pleasant for all of us may have been the most important outcome of this outsourcing. Some years later, a crisis situation developed as we prepared our new budget for the new fiscal year beginning May 1. Our new production schedule included 300,000 cases of number 10 pickle cans to cover potential salvage sales. Salvage sales occur when sales are soft and some of the pickle case inventory reaches its best if used by date. Our headquarters, marketing, and sales personnel factored these historical salvage sales into our new budget production schedule. Our division president stated, "We budget for only good quality sales, not salvage sales." As a result, 300,000 cases were removed from our budget, creating a $1 million hole in our budget. Our president was a very unforgiving finance guy and scheduled to be in Holland to review our budget in a few weeks. I heard this unforgiving finance guy say in a business meeting that adversity is a great motivator. I used these words to rally the management team many times during these difficult financial times. It is a title of a chapter in my book. We scheduled 3 days of off-site meetings in Saugatuck to brainstorm cost-cutting ideas and departmental restructures to take $1 million out of our budget. These steps included departmental restructures and resulting in reducing the number of hourly employees from 285 to 210 through voluntary enhanced retirement incentives for long-term employees and voluntary $2,000 resignation payments to hourly employees with only a few years of service. Steps also included severance payments to salaried employees. When our president arrived in Holland to review our budget, he said, "You have a major cost problem here in Holland." We responded by saying, "Yes, and here is our plan to fill the hole." Our president was so impressed with our plan that he said, "We will fully support you in headquarters." Without this plan, Holland Factory would have been closed over 30 years ago. With declining Heinz pickle production, we had considerable underutilized pickle production capacity. If we could not pack pickles for Heinz due to declining pickle sales to cover our fixed costs, that's health care, wages, salaries, property taxes, and so on, we proposed packing pickles for competitors as a means to generate income to cover our fixed costs. Heinz gave us a green light to proceed. I knew the upper management of our pickle company competitors through my involvement representing Heinz and the Pickle Packer Trade Association. Our cost reduction initiatives allowed us to offer favorable pricing to pack pickles for other pickle companies. We packed pickles for Steinfeld Pickle Company in Portland, Oregon, Nally Fine Foods in Tacoma, Washington, and Paramount Pickle Company in Louisville, Kentucky, using their recipes, generating $1 per case above our cost, generating income to cover our unabsorbed fixed costs. During these financially troubling times, we also took advantage of an opportunity which came our way. Perrigo in Allegan needed to find a co-packer to fill their 32-ounce generic mouthwash for 2 to 3 years while they built a new factory down south. We discussed the project with Perrigo and determined that we could fill their 32-ounce mouthwash on our 32-ounce vinegar line. We offered to fill their 32-ounce mouthwash for a toll fee of $1 per case above our cost, generating $200,000 to $300,000 income per year to cover more fixed costs. Mouthwash is considered an over-the-counter drug by the Food and Drug Administration. We needed to register as a drug manufacturer with the FDA to fill mouthwash for Perrigo. One morning, I got a call from the FDA Detroit office asking if we knew what we were doing here in Heinz Holland. Mouthwash must be made from pure water, purified by reverse osmosis. It cannot be made with city water, which contains minerals. I explained to the FDA that Perrigo would make the mouthwash from their purified water and ship the mouthwash to us in trucks. We will pump the mouthwash through a new separate mouthwash line, which will be used for only mouthwash directly to our filler, so that it could not be contaminated by city water or other Heinz food products. The FDA said, "Oh, you are a drug repacker rather than a drug manufacturer, but you still need to register as a drug manufacturer and pass a drug manufacturer inspection." 3 years later, the FDA finally showed up for the drug inspection. I told them, we just filled our last mouthwash case a few months ago. The FDA inspector turned around and left the factory. To my knowledge, Heinz Holland is the only Heinz facility in the over 150-year history of the global corporation to register as a drug manufacturer. The Heinz Holland management started to sense that the Holland factory was getting a lot of credibility and respect in headquarters for controlling costs despite significant production volume declines. This gave us the courage to challenge upper management in Pittsburgh headquarters as to why white distilled and cider vinegars produced here in Heinz Holland and were being shipped in bulk trucks to Pittsburgh, Heinz Pittsburgh factory, to be bottled and then shipped to customers in the South, when it could be bottled in Holland and shipped directly to the customers in the South at a significantly lower cost. I called my boss, Dan Nolan, in Pittsburgh daily, asking, how can we allow this negative cost situation to continue? As a result, all vinegar bottling in the United States was transferred from Heinz factories in Tracy, California, Muscatine, Iowa, and Pittsburgh factory into the Heinz Holland factory. Also, Jack Daniel's barbecue sauce was transferred from the Heinz Fremont, Ohio factory into Heinz Holland. This huge influx of Heinz vinegar and a new product, barbecue sauce, not only stabilized our production volume, but also increased our total annual production cases. In the late 1990s, Tony O'Reilly introduced Project Millennia, a project to restructure the global Heinz Corporation for growth in the new millennium. One of the outcomes of Millennia was Project Excel. Project Excel spun off Heinz baby food, Heinz private label soup, and other Heinz private label brands to the Del Monte Corporation. Since Pittsburgh factory produced these Heinz brands, the Pittsburgh factory and all supporting headquarters functions, including product development, sales, and marketing, also needed to be spun off to Del Monte. I remember being at a physical year-end meeting which Heinz conducted to discuss the performance of Heinz during the past fiscal year and to discuss the Del Monte spin-off project. The president of Heinz U.S. Sales presented the Project Millennia Del Monte spin-off. I remember the sales president saying, "Jerry Shoup, I know you are out there in the audience. The lawyers who developed the Del Monte spinoff forgot to include in the spinoff Heinz private label pickles produced in Heinz Holland factory, and since all private label brand product development, marketing, and sales support personnel were transferred to Del Monte, we do not have the support personnel remaining here in headquarters to manage private label pickles remaining here in headquarters. We have recommended to Heinz upper management to exit the private label pickle business in Holland, Michigan. If you want to retain the private label pickle business, then you and the Heinz Holland factory will need to manage the business. Our Holland factory management and union teams knew that we could not afford to allow Heinz to exit the private label pickle business, since this represented over 50% of our remaining retail pickle business. As a result, in addition to our current day jobs, I became the Heinz private label pickle sales manager. Our quality assurance manager became the label and product development manager, and our financial controller took over the product pricing functions. We were in a staff cutting mode. We could not afford to hire additional staffing. As a result of the Pittsburgh factory being spun off to Del Monte, the remaining non-private label Heinz brand mustard, horseradish sauce, and Worcestershire sauce brands were transferred out of the Pittsburgh factory into Heinz Holland factory. At this point in time, the hang-on strategy of cost-cutting and cost improvement projects finally worked, making it attractive for Heinz to transfer these products into Heinz Holland factory, transforming the factory into a factory with a highly diverse production portfolio of profitable Heinz varieties. I also had a very interesting experience and opportunity to work with the History Channel on a Modern Marvels segment. The History Channel wanted to do a Modern Marvels segment on acids. including nitric acid in explosives, sulfuric acid in cleaning metals, and acetic acid for food grade use. Acetic acid is the main acid in vinegar. The History Channel contacted Heinz. Heinz contacted me, and I worked with the Modern Marvels producers. They asked for a step-by-step process in making vinegar and then scheduled a day of filming and interviewing me here in Holland. That segment aired several times, and I received many calls from friends and colleagues. In 2003, I got a call from Soren Wolf, Holland City Manager, asking me if Heinz would consider giving to the City of Holland a perpetual easement along the 1,800 feet of Heinz shoreline to build a walkway connecting the City Cullen Park walkway to 16th Street. When Soren was discussing this idea, I became overwhelmed with the thoughts about Heinz Holland giving back to the Holland City and the Holland citizens what they gave to Heinz 106 years earlier, that being access to Lake Macatawa shoreline to build a pickle factory in Holland, Michigan. I realized that the goodwill from building a walkway would be tremendous for the Heinz company. In 2008, the ribbon was cut by Mayor Al McGeehan and myself, launching the new Heinz walkway with U.S. Representative Pete Hoekstra, State Senator Wayne Kuipers, and children of Heinz employees observing. I do believe the steps taken by Holland management and union leaders allowed the Holland factory to survive and be successful, as outlined in my book. I also know that these steps allowed the Heinz Holland company to achieve the distinction of being the oldest company in Holland doing business in 3 centuries under the same name, ownership, and product line. I also believe that these steps set the foundation for Heinz Holland factory to survive and be successful during the merger of Heinz and Kraft food companies into the new Kraft Heinz company, as evidenced by the transfer of the iconic Kraft brand Grey Poupon from a Kraft factory in Pennsylvania into the Heinz Holland factory. I want to thank you for your attention, and I'm sorry during this virtual presentation that I cannot take questions at this time. Again, thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Jerry, for taking the time to be with us tonight. Again, if you'd like to make a donation to the Holland Museum, please visit our website, hollandmuseum.org/support. Join us again next week for Jay Knight's Power of Pronouns, Impact of Affirming Language presentation, another virtual program we're offering on Thursday, August 27th from 7 to 8:30. That is a live program on Zoom, so you can go to our website and register on Eventbrite, and then we'll send you the invitation to Zoom the day before the program. Also, check out our website, hollandmuseum.org, for additional programs. The museum is now open to the public again with new hours, Monday, Friday, and Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. And be sure to join us on September 14th for our free second Monday from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. Thanks again for joining us, and have a good night.